All right, and we're live. Good evening, everyone. I'm Peyton, and this is episode 3 of Guns 111th One-on-One. Remember to submit any questions you may have through the comments section on YouTube, and you may also submit any questions through gunchannels.com. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible during tonight's broadcast. Excuse me. Tonight's guest is Jim Fuller of Rifle Dynamics. Thanks for being here, Jim.
Hey, how you doing, John?
I'm very well. All right, so we're just going to jump straight into questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
All right. So, what is Rifle Dynamics as a company?
And we're live. Good evening, everyone.
Oh, that's me.
Episode 3 of Guns.
We got some kind of delay loop going on there.
Yeah, that's me. That's for monitoring other channels.
So, what is it? You're supposed to turn the volume down and all that stuff, you know?
No, you're good.
Anyhow, Rifle Dynamics. Well, we're a '07 SOT manufacturer. We pay the special occupation tax, so we can do SBRs, machine guns, suppressors, all that stuff. When we got our license in '07, I've been working on these guns for many, many years, but we actually became a licensed manufacturer in 2007, and that's when I, began doing it full time. I was always doing it part time on the side, but at that point, I'd built up enough work to consider it my main job at that time, and that's when we did it.
Nice. So, what's your experience? Law enforcement, military, private contracting?
No, basically, as far as military, I was too young for Vietnam and too old for everything else. So I never went in. I don't do authority really well, and to me, going into the military when there wasn't anything to fight, it's like just didn't make a lot of sense to me. So did some contracting experience in the early '80s. Then moved into construction most of my life, and then did a lot of PSD work on the side as well. But also constantly training. I've worked and trained with a lot of really good guys, and actually worked for them training their stuff as well. So I've got a lot of time and experience with the firearms and stuff, and particularly with the AK. Because back in the day when I first discovered that, I got my first one in the early '80s, and they were at that time pretty hated. I don't expect you to remember what it was like at that time, but most people were Vietnam veterans, and they did not like that gun at all. So
Yeah, I'm still young compared to some people. I was actually 9 when the '80s ended, so.
Well, you may remember it, but I talked to a lot of guys, and they don't realize that gun was so hated not all that long ago.
Yeah, it does seem like somewhat of a recent development.
Well, really, the war on terror is what really brought the popularity of that gun into this country, is because people were seeing it more and more. You and all the other guys who went there and experienced it and saw it firsthand for the first time probably went, wow, hey, that thing's there's something to that gun. And the guys that came back saying, man, I got to get me one of them. Well, I was fortunate. I had a lot of friends that were in contracting, a lot of friends in the military. I did a lot of work with USO as well in those days. So I met a lot of guys through there that kind of steered me in that direction. And when I started playing with those guns in the early '80s, there was really nobody that would work on them. I found things I didn't like about the gun. The sights sucked, the safety sucked. Some of the standard stuff people always bitch about. But the first time I took one into a gunsmithing shop to try to get something done on it, as soon as I opened it up and took it out, oh man, I thought the guy was going to have a fucking coronary. It was like, get that communist shit out of my shop. What the fuck do you think you bring that shit in my store for? Fuck you, so on and so forth, out the door. It's like, wow, that ain't good. Next shop I went into, same thing. So I figured at that point, it's going to be me or nobody.
Yeah. So when you got into AK-47s, was it more for a sporting or a hunting or a self-defense application?
No, it's always been for self-defense applications. I grew up hunting, but I'm actually at this stage in my life, I really don't care much about hunting. If I had to feed myself, I'd do it. When I was younger, I did it quite a bit, but it's kind of something that's just kind of gone out of my spirit anymore. I don't really need it. Like I said, if I'm hungry, I'll kill something and eat it. But to me, guns are really all about what the Second Amendment's all about. And that's bottom line. That's why I built the AK-47. It's not a hunting rifle. It's not a match rifle. It's for shooting bad people. Period. And that's what I like to work on.
For me, AK-47s, I bought my first one, which is a Sega AK. It's a very sporterized one with all the synthetic furniture, all the wood's been removed, that kind of thing. And I'm in the process of starting to upgrade it. So.
Well, that's underneath that's just a standard old Russian AK underneath all that plastic furniture and stuff on there, and they turn right back into an AK really well. You know, we've made a lot of money doing that, and put a lot of good guns in people's hands doing that too. So, and that's just one aspect of what we do, converting Saiga's work. We've been working a little bit more on the Vepers now, but you know, I prefer to see one thing about Rifle Dynamics is generally, you know, we're not a gunsmithing shop in a way. Really, we're all shooters first. You know, there's a big difference in, you know, a guy that's a gunsmith, that's a really good machinist, that's really good with metallurgy, that knows a lot of things and stuff. That's a really respectable thing. But a guy like that, he likes to build things that are really tight, really beautiful, really sleek, really precision, which is respectable. But for fighting guns, that ain't what you want. You know, you need a gun that's a little loose, a little sloppy, that will work, that will handle being dirty, with handle a lot of carbon, and it can handle a lot of heat. And I mean, that's what fighting guns do. You know, you've got plenty of experience doing that, so you know what I'm talking about. Guns that can take that kind of abuse, you know, heavy use weapons, and that's really where we come from. I spent a lot of time training. I spent a lot of time working with weapons in different situations, and you know, that's the difference between a guy that's just a machinist and a guy who really knows what a gun should do and how it should perform. You know, what areas you dehorn to make it comfortable for you. You know, I mean, you know, what can you do to change the bore line? Just different things that you do to approach the gun that you know as a shooter would make it better. And I think that's one of the reasons that we've kind of excelled in what we do. One, because we stick true to the original design, but we also treat it from the shooter's point of view, as opposed to, you know, I mean, I've seen guys take the AK and, you know, I'm going to build a milled receiver and I'm going to make the tolerances so tight that you can't even rack the bolt. Well, it ain't going to really be the legendary reliable gun that the AK is known for.
Yeah, it was. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Owen Martin of Snakehound Machine, but me and him were actually having a conversation about that yesterday.
Yeah, no, Owen's a good dude. I got to know him recently. He was at our open house this year, and it's the first time I met him in person. And you know, they do some pretty cool stuff. You know, they're kind of in a different vein than what we do. You know, I kind of look at them more like in the line of what's that, Salient. You know, they kind of run in that vein. You know, really fancy guns and stuff like that. They do some pretty cool stuff there. And you know, it's just our stuff has always been more about lightweight, minimalism, and just, you know, straight up working fighting gun. It's just the difference of what we do. You know, I mean, if you look at the guys out there doing AKs, everybody really does have their own little niche. You know, and this just happens to be ours. You know.
Oh, yeah. Well, you have a very large following on Facebook, as we talked about a little bit earlier before we started. 21,000 people follow you. And, I mean, you got to be doing something right. A lot of people respect you.
Well, you know, when we started doing this, really, Krebs was one of the most well-known guys doing it. He was doing it before I was, you know. But again, you know, Krebs was building nice stuff, but a lot of people would complain that his stuff was heavy or, you know, sharp edges, whatever, you know. I mean, I looked at it as like, man, the guy's making some pretty nice stuff, and he was doing really, really cool stuff with the AK, but I just took my approach to it a different direction, and it kind of took off for us. You know, Red Jacket was around back in the early days of that, too, you know, but that was when they were a small AK shop, and they were pretty well known at that time as well. Of course, you know, TV changed that for them a lot, and, you know, they're not even any kind of what they used to be at all, but, you know, Krebs is still out there, we're still out there, but the nice thing I'm starting to see, and what I really always wanted to do, was really expand the AK industry in this country, because that's really good for all of us. You know, years ago when I got into this, there really wasn't nothing for it. There was nothing cool aftermarket to put on the gun. Nobody knew anything about the gun. Nobody could work on it. There wasn't a big choice of ammo. But now, I mean, if you look at just the difference in the last 10 years, the popularity of the AK and how much that industry has grown. You know, you got guys popping up like Snakehound Machine. I'm going a little blank on them. There's several companies I've seen that are doing some pretty cool stuff, and they're coming out with nice guns now. And you weren't seeing stuff like that as little as 5 or 6 years ago. There weren't a lot of people out there like that. So that just tells me that the popularity is growing, the industry is growing, and that's something that I've always wanted for this industry, is just get bigger, and particularly for people to finally, for once, give this gun the respect it deserves, because, you know, honestly, most people don't realize this, and I speak it a lot because they don't know the numbers are this great, but on the average, when you look at your most famous fighting rifles, your M4, your G3s, the FAL, M1A, you know, M14, whatever, none of these guns were ever produced in numbers over 20 million. But the AK itself has been produced in numbers well over 100 million. So there's a reason for that. And we're probably the only big country in the whole world that never adapted to the gun. And to me, I think we've missed out a lot on that. Of course, I'm a little biased.
Well, do you think the surge of last year, where the panic buy of last year, is after they bought all the ARs and the M14s and all those, and the AKs were some of the last things left? Do you think that helped contribute?
Sure, it does, because any gun, at that point when it starts to become, because I've been through a couple of panic buys. You probably don't remember the '94 one. You might have, but it was the same kind of thing in '94 when they passed the assault weapons ban. Everybody was buying everything they could find. There was no guns on the shelf in any store, and it didn't matter if it was a gun you ever wanted it before. If it was there, you bought it. So there might have been a few people picked up on the AK because maybe that's all they could get, and after they shot it a while, went, hey, this thing's kind of cool. Maybe I'll fix it up and like it a little bit. If you just give it a chance, you'll find there's a lot to it.
All right. In your shop for Rifle Dynamics, why do you primarily focus on the AK-47s, not the easier M4, M16 platforms?
Simple, like you said. It's not easy. Anybody can build an AR on their kitchen table with tools. Of course, some do it better than others. They follow specs and they use good parts. There's a big difference there. But the AK is really a lot more like blacksmithing than it is gunsmithing. It's 40s technology. It's riveting sheet metal to milled metal. It's special heat treating. It's flexibility in the design, loose tolerances. It's a way different thing, and almost every gun is an individual gun. I mean, they may be all made out of similar parts, but everything is fitted individually, and it's almost a lost art in some ways, because when AK started getting popular in this country again, back in the 80s, we had the Chinese AKs, which were very well made, Hungarian AKs. Those things were really solidly built guns, particularly the Chinese AKs. I'm a big fan of those, but when people started building AKs here and some of the cheaper stuff started coming into the country, it's like, Jesus Christ, this stuff is junk, and the construction methods that people were using, they were trying to rehash things that the Russians had figured out back in the 40s don't work. Things like welding the guns together, screwing the guns together, grade 8 screws, whatever you want to do. This stuff just doesn't work. It's not the design of the gun. It's not the way it was intended to work. They're intended to be riveted together with 1mm sheet metal and a soft heat treating so that they'll flex and they'll move. That's why the gun, that and the fact that it uses a tapered case is the reason that gun is so reliable.
Okay. We're going to take some audience questions now. YouTube, y'all need to start with the comments if you'd like to ask Jim Fuller of Rifle Dynamics any questions. We have a certain time limit specifically to take audience questions. There are quite a bit of you on here, so feel free to ask. We'll get to as much as possible tonight. We're going to switch over to Gun Channel's questions first, though. First one is, what is your AR-15? What is your favorite AR-15, if you even prefer them?
Actually, I would probably have to say Noveske. There's a lot of good ones out there, and the reason I say Noveske is because basically Noveske, I kind of modeled my business after what he did. He went into the AR line and decided to build a really nice AR. He took it in a certain direction. He wanted to build a fighting gun that people would like, and I kind of modeled my business model after what Noveske did, because I really liked the way he approached the gun and what he did. He started out small, and he did some really revolutionary stuff with that gun back before people were doing it. And I believe it's a pretty nice quality gun for it. I mean, obviously I'm not a big fan of those guns. I've owned several over the years. I'm actually building my own right now, and that's basically just from a bunch of parts from a bunch of different people that are friends of mine. How that goes. But it's going to be a cool gun when it's all done. At least all my guys that work on them all the time tell me that.
Okay.
I don't know. If I could say, the Bravo Company stuff, that's certainly high quality stuff. I wouldn't feel undergunned with anything like that. There's plenty of stuff out there. It's just not something I follow a whole lot. I'm not up on the most recent things.
All right. We got another question here from the same guy, DB Cooper. Veprs or Saigas? Am I pronouncing that right? Because I hear it called Saiga.
Technically in Russia, I think it's Saiga. But everybody says Saiga. We all know what it means. It's like crank. There's no such thing as a crank either. Everybody here knows what you mean when you say it. But of the two, myself, because I like lightweight guns, I prefer the Saiga. But then again, on the other hand, if I'm building a machine gun, I would probably use the Vepr. But then again, machine guns aren't that you know, we build a lot of machine guns for law enforcement, contracting, things like that, but we obviously don't build them for the public. But the Saiga rifles themselves, they don't make the best machine guns. They're not as robust as some of the mil-spec guns are. I mean, they're great AKs, but you know, and they work fine as a semi-auto gun. But I found that the Bulgarian guns probably make the best machine guns, and certainly the Veprs would be a better choice, being a heavier built gun, heavier spec gun. You know?
All right. Another question from DB Cooper. He seems to be on the roll with the comments tonight. American barrels for AK-47s. Do you think they're getting better with their chrome line, or how do they compare to the?
They definitely are. A few years ago, they were shit. They were, you know, they were so soft you could damn near drive a pin in them without drilling the hole. But they've really gotten good, particularly in the last year. We had to have crank barrels made a while back, and we went through hell just trying to do it. And but we finally figured out some of the things that needed to be done with particularly with hard chrome, and to end up with the right spec and the right rifling when it's all done. But now that we've been using a lot of nitrite coated barrels, and that is, in my opinion, the way to go from now on. I will do everything with nitrite from now on, because we built up 2 machine guns with the nitrite barrels. They are dead nuts accurate, and after about 6,000 to 8,000 rounds in both of those guns, without cleaning, there's no pitting in them. I mean, they're just flawless. When you do the barrels, you don't have to cut them short so that the hard chrome will bring them back. The stuff doesn't change tolerances, yet it's harder than hard chrome. I don't know why it works or how it works. I'm not that smart, but I know it works well, and we've just decided recently to switch all over to nitrite coated U.S. barrels. I mean, if I can get a foreign barrel, I certainly would. But the performance we're getting out of these barrels now are every bit as good as anything I've gotten out of a Bulgarian or a Russian barrel.
Okay, cool. Mr. Min19, our first YouTube commenter, what did you do before you started this company?
Actually, my last job, I was a project manager for a major electrical contractor here in town. I was working on one of the casinos on the Strip here. And I always did this stuff at night on the sides and on the weekends, you know, the whole time I was doing that. But I was mainly in the construction industry here in Vegas for the last 20 years. So. Okay.
Alan Slogan, don't get too far into this because it seems like it can be a time consumer in question. Tempering an AK receiver, advice, temps, and times.
What was the question again? I'm sorry. I just heard AK receiver.
Tempering an AK receiver, any advice, and temp and times. Just answer the first 2. The temp and time seems like it'll be a little long-winded.
That could be a really long, drug-out process. It's you know, tempering an AK receiver is very difficult to do, particularly if it's 1mm sheet metal. Most of the guys that do go parties, they just temper the ejectors, and they temper the axis pin holes, which is, it's going to work, but it's not right. To completely heat treat the receiver, most people are not equipped to do it right, and you're probably going to end up with something that's warped or twisted and probably not going to make a very good gun when you're done. Best bet, buy a quality-made receiver. They cost about $100 for a Nodak Spud or a 74 ULLC. Yeah, it's got a serial number on it. I know some people want to make them without serial numbers, but an AK receiver that's not heat-treated properly is not going to be a good gun, particularly if it's got to be a heavy-use gun, and you know what I mean by heavy use.
All right, we got from Gun Websites. By the way, Gun Websites holds an AK-47 chat. I'm not exactly sure of the date, but I'm sure you'd be a great guest on there. And Gun Websites treats the Second Amendment gun community very well, so I want to answer one of his questions. It's kind of a joke question here, too. If you were to tattoo an AK-47 on your face, what kind of AK-47 would it be?
My face? Well, you know, I actually have a lot of tattoos. I don't think I would ever get a face tattoo. God, boy, that's a weird question, but I guess I'll roll with it.
Well, if you follow Everyday No Days Off, there's a rapper called Stitches. He has AK-47s tattooed right here and right here, and I'm guessing that's where it comes from.
Well, I don't really look at a lot of rap. I mean, you know, I mean, I'm more of an '80s music kind of guy. Actually, I like Five Finger Death Punch if you like to talk about modern music still, but another story altogether. Man, I don't know. I got a crank on my arm. I guess I'd go with a crank because it's small and I could probably put it somewhere.
Now, let's see. We're going to wrap this first section up of audience questions here in just a second. Let me run through this real quick. All right, we're just going to continue on. We'll come back to audience questions at a designated time later in the broadcast.
Cool.
What is now? You host build parties for Rifle Dynamics, correct?
Not build parties. We hold build classes.
Build classes. Okay, I apologize for that.
No, but there's a big difference there. There's a big difference there, and I'll explain it if you'd like. But go ahead.
Yes. What is the value of building your own firearm? Is pretty much the question I was going to lead into.
Okay. Well, it's huge, and those who have done it you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. Even if you've just put together an AR on your kitchen table, it's still pretty gratifying to take all those parts, screw them all together through the stress of it all, and then you fire that first shot through it, and it goes bang, and it hits it where you want it to hit, and you go, wow, I did that. That's pretty cool. It really is. If you're a person who likes to build stuff, that likes crafts, and I always have. So I was always thrilled, but to this day I still get thrilled when I build something that I'm really excited about and go out and fire the first round through it. It's like, wow, cool, it worked. Plus also, too, there's really no better way to know your weapon system than to build it from scratch. Anybody that builds an AR can pretty much diagnose anything that happens to that gun in the field and probably have a pretty good idea of how to fix it. Well, it's the same thing with an AK. The AK is not known for having problems, but if you build one from scratch, you really learn an appreciation for how the thing was put together and the technology that it was built on. The one reason why I was correcting you about the build party versus a build class. Build parties are actually pretty cool. I've attended a couple of them that were done pretty well, but there's a lot of them out there where they're essentially what it is: a bunch of guys getting together in a garage. They pull all their tools together, they bring all their parts together, and they share all their knowledge, and they sit around for a weekend and they build some guns, which is cool. For me, our build classes are quite a bit different. We're teaching you about the history of the gun. We're teaching you about the science behind the gun, the spec of the gun, how the gun should be properly put together with methods that are almost a dying art in some ways. Fortunately, I've had a lot of experiences in all the construction methods of putting an AK together, so it became pretty easy for me to do. But when you learn these things, just ask anybody that's taken one of our classes, look at some of the reviews, and you'll see these people go, wow, I had no idea it was like this. It's so cool to know this. And the fact is, once you've taken the class, if you ever thought you wanted to do this yourself, we're gonna automatically eliminate all the pitfalls. We're gonna tell you right away, don't get this, don't get that. You're gonna need this. You're gonna want that. Don't deal with this. Don't deal with that. Don't try to do it this way. Do it this way, and you're gonna save yourself a lot of money. The biggest thing is people complain about the price of this thing. But you figure that one of our guns, you're going to end up with a gun when it's all done. Our guns don't sell for anything less than $1,000. Our cheapest ones are $1,200, $1,300. And these are built by the student, but they're built with us one-on-one with the student as they're doing it. So they're getting a good quality gun when they're done. Plus, they know how to do it. They know everything about the tools. They know where to order everything. They get a list of all the suppliers that we use. And if they want to go out and start a business doing it, I push them to do it. Go out. Challenge me. Do better than me. That's because, again, it goes back to what I say. I want to grow the AK industry. So doing these classes, I've actually put a few guys in business, and I've put some pretty good gunsmiths in some stores out here that are turning out good AK work now. And on top of all that, I've done a lot of military armorers classes where we probably put about 160 or 180 military armorers through AK training, which they're out now, sharing that with all the other guys in the field. So to me, that's a nice force multiplier, and we're real proud to be able to do that. So our build classes are more about an education in the gun, how it should be put together, how you can put your own gun together, and you can do it fairly inexpensively once you know where to go, what to do, and the right parts to buy. You can build yourself a pretty nice collection of any AK you thought you might ever want.
Okay, we have another gun channels question. It's a pretty good one. So, what is the most common mistake made by a first-time builder?
Watching the wrong YouTube videos would be one. There's a lot of them out there that are just garbage. I'm not going to name any names. I will tend to tell you things that I think are smart, but rather than get into the negative side of things, do your homework. I've put out a lot of videos on this stuff to tell people what to look for. I mean, obviously they can come take our class. We're going to be doing more and more videos on our YouTube channel, which we'll be talking about soon. But really, it's about the knowledge, I mean, you follow me there, Chuck?
Oh yeah, I follow you very well on that. Yeah, I myself have made a great many mistakes on YouTube. I've never claimed to be an expert in the field of firearms, just a well-informed enthusiast. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and people call me out on it and call me bad names, and I'm cool with it.
Well, as far as, but again, as far as the build party, I recommend people try it. One thing I would say though is you're going to do it, at least buy a commercial quality made receiver, so you'll have a gun that's going to last when you're done. If you're only going to shoot a couple hundred rounds a year out of it for the rest of your life, it might be okay. But if you're going to treat it as a gun that you might want to defend yourself with, a home bent receiver is not the way to go. Absolutely not the way to go. That's probably the biggest pitfall you'll get into.
All right, we're going to switch gears here. Now, you spent some time at the Bundy Ranch recently. We're going to talk. Well, I personally want to know about that experience. I wasn't there, so I'd like to know your thoughts on it. What exactly happened? You don't have to go in. You only need to go into as much detail as you're comfortable with.
Well, let me just start by saying, from the very beginning, this really never was about cattle in particular. I mean, that was the symbol of it, sure. But, I've lived here in the desert area most of my life, particularly in the Vegas area, about 18 years now. And I'm a big ATV fan. I'm a big outdoorsman. I spend a lot of time in the desert. And over the years, we've just seen the BLM abuses get worse and worse and worse. I mean, they're not the friendly ranger anymore. I mean, certainly there is guys like that, but the way that they responded in the Bundy Ranch thing was incredibly out of control and out of line. It should have never been like that. I mean, if they were worried about the money, they could have attached that man's property, and when he died, they could have taken it. Instead, they spend over $2 million bringing in contract cowboys, and I'm telling you, those were the stupidest fucking wranglers I ever seen. But they're claiming the guy owed them $1.1 million, and even if that's true, $1.1 million, okay, they spent over $2 million trying to collect it. What kind of sense does that make? And in the process of doing it, they also closed down 600,000 acres that I've spent many years camping, driving ATVs on, hunting, and fishing in. And they do this with regularity. They just decide that, well, we're going to do this, and then we can get into the fact of Harry Reid and land swaps with the BLM. People in politics in this state and other states as well. I know other people see the same thing. Texas and most of the western states. I believe you're on the East Coast, so you guys probably don't deal with BLM too much because BLM is mostly west of the Rockies, and they own 80% of our state, or they control 80% of our state. So they're constantly shutting down recreation areas, and if they catch you in there, they treat you with a Nazi attitude quite often. So anyhow, when all that aside, when all this stuff broke out up there, I was hearing a lot of stuff, and basically where I live in Vegas, the Bundy Ranch is about an hour and 10 minutes away. So I thought, okay, I'm going to drive up there and see what the hell's going on. And what I saw was disgusting. It's the first time in my life I'd ever seen, people pointing guns at each other like that, government people and citizens pointing guns at each other like that. It was an experience I'd hoped I'd never see in this country, but I did. And by the grace of God, nobody ever pulled the trigger. And frankly, I kind of credit our local PD for that, because people said, oh, there were 200 armed federal officers there. There wasn't 200 armed feds there. There were quite a few of them, but it was the biggest force there was probably Metro PD. And they were there as strictly peacekeepers. They weren't there to support the feds or to support the people. They just didn't want anything to happen, and in my opinion, they did a phenomenal job of making it that way. The BLM guys, if you would have watched, well, you probably get this because you've been through combat tactics before, but the way that leader of the BLM guys walked his people right into the middle of an ambush, there's no way that guy should be an agent in charge of anything other than dog catching, and even if that, it would be a joke. That guy was, but he's typical of the way a lot of the government agencies are getting to be like that right now. Now, we've been called domestic terrorists. We've been called militia. Because I spent about a week up there. I ended up doing inside security on the Bundy Ranch, just working, keeping things safe. And I think it wasn't a dangerous deal, nothing like that at all. But there were a lot of militia guys. There were a lot of Oath Keeper guys up there from all over the place. I mean, from the East Coast, from the South, everywhere. And the first time in my life I saw something like that, it left a pretty big impression on me. And it left a lot of questions, too, that I think is going to be incorporated in a lot of people's training. A couple of people that I knew were out there. They were trainers as well, and well, Jaeger was out there. I was out there working with him as well. I know he's planning on incorporating some of the stuff in his classes that he learned out there. You know, command and control is a total disaster in a situation like that. You've got all these different groups who all want to be in charge, and you know, I don't want to get really in depth into that stuff because there's people out there that are very confident, and there's people out there that are probably not leaders that thought they were, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, very understandable. With the military career, I'm not going to name names, but people that know me know exactly who I'm talking about. And it's that way in any command structure, really. Even militia groups to the military to organized police force. That's the way I feel about it.
Well, the communications and stuff were just insane. I mean, like somebody call on a radio that's watching the freeway, they say, "Oh, a paddy wagon and 8 cruisers just pulled off and they're heading towards the Bundy Ranch." Like, okay, guys, kid up, you know, and then nobody shows up. You call them back. You said there was these people coming. What happened? Well, we thought they were. Okay, excuse me. How do you mistake a paddy wagon and 8 fucking cruisers for that you didn't see? You know, that's the kind of stuff that was really rough in that whole deal. On the other hand, there was some pretty competent guys there that you know, you could tell just by looking at them. They were skilled. They were trained. They had proper gear. And they were very disciplined, and I'm sure you know what I mean by that.
Oh yeah.
So that was good to see that. It was just a wide variety of stuff there, and an experience I will not likely soon forget. You know, and sorry I had to see it, but it seems to be the way our government wants to head this time. At this time, you know.
Yeah. Well, for better or worse, it ended Well, for the better, it ended peacefully with no shots fired. So
Absolutely.
Everyone could go home to their families. I'm not condoning the actions of the BLM, but their fathers and mothers, and they got kids, and they got to put kids through school and stuff too. So I know that factored into it, even though it may or may it wasn't right in my opinion. But I can also understand from being in the military doing something you're not supposed to do. Mm-hmm. But I agree with the way that it was handled through the militias also. And it ended peacefully. At the end of the day, everyone got to go home to their wife and families.
Yep. And that should be what it's all about, you know, to stop that thing. I mean, like I said, the whole thing could have been totally avoided. They could have just attached the guy's property if they wanted to take suck money out of him. And when he died, they would own the property. I mean, he's a 70-year-old man. He's not going to live much longer. You know, I mean, I hate to be crude like that, but they could have done that, saved the world a lot of money and a lot of disgust. You know what I mean? Instead of going out there spending over $2 million trying to play a bunch of cowboys and do it the way they did it, it was a freaking joke. You know, but it's just the way they.
The IRS right now in their auditing system, it's horrible. So you expect.
No, I'm on everybody's list, dude. I don't care.
I mean, you spent $2 million to collect a $1 million bill, but it doesn't make sense.
No, it's insane. Like I said, they could have attached the guy's land. What would that have cost him? A few $1,000s in legal bills. The guy dies, they own his land, and then they let Harry Reid sell it to a Chinese guy and make a big money off of it. Yeah. You know, trust me, there's a lot of that going on here too. So Harry Reid likes to use the BLM for his land deals. Mm-hmm.
Well, speaking of Harry Reid, he called all the militia there domestic terrorists, and I know you.
I wear that like a badge of honor.
2 minutes earlier, but I'd like to elaborate. What's your thoughts and feelings of being called a domestic terrorist, for one? Because that's pretty hard hitting.
It is pretty hard. You would consider the source it came from. The guy's a fucking moron. Everything that comes out of his mouth lately is total bullshit. You know, I mean, just look at the stuff he's saying. It's like the guy's lost it. I don't think he's going to. He's supposed to. He's up. His term is up in 2 years. I don't really think he's going to run again. Most people don't think he is, and he just doesn't give a shit anymore. I mean, he's filthy rich from being a senator, from being in politics all his life. He started out poor, and now he's pretty damn rich, and all he's been is a politician all of his life. But you know how that goes. Right now, after that comment, I wish I had that vape.
Well, feel free to light up. I mean, it's your house.
No, I just quit smoking 2 months ago, dude. I'm not going to break that.
I haven't, like we discussed, I haven't quit smoking. I just found another form of doing it. All right, we're backtracking again a little bit. Your thoughts on government overstepping their boundaries in this country? We'll use the BLM since it's obviously the most current thing we're talking about. The BLM did, at least at one time, I feel, serve a purpose, but now they're just, I'm kind of losing myself here in my own conversation. like the military, we can't mobilize on U.S. soil, but the government is kind of creating military organizations that can. Do you feel so? Can you elaborate a little bit on this about how you feel like the BLM?
Well, the militarization of most of the federal government agencies is certainly a factor. We see it every day. I mean, to be honest with you, when I was looking over the whole thing with the standoff with BLM, there they had a crew of, it looked like maybe 8 or 10 guys in ACUs that was like their main team. It looked like, you know, these are the guys that were brought in to be the heavy hitters, and frankly, they didn't look all that. And I'm being honest with you. You know, I don't know if that's just because they looked like they were lost and did not even want to be there. They kind of stayed huddled in their own little group. It was just kind of bizarre to watch. But you know, you look around, you see all the armored vehicles now. You know, everybody's wearing SAPI plates, and is it good or is it bad? It's hard to say, you know, because I'm pretty pro law enforcement and I deal with a lot of law enforcement, and I do understand the reasoning behind it, but I also understand they're supposed to be police, not military. I mean, that's why we have National Guard and things like that are supposed to cover the military-type jobs. Would you agree?
Oh, yes, sir. One of the things that a lot of people really probably don't notice is with the drawdown of the forces in Afghanistan, all those military vehicles have to have a place to go. After a certain amount of time, those military vehicles are going to end up in the police force because they're sold so cheaply. So it's only going to get worse. It's really on to the cops to make sure they become police officers and officials of the law instead of a military-style organization.
Yeah, it's a whole different ballgame, you know. Peacekeeping versus fighting, you know. There's a big difference there.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're going to take some more audience questions if you feel like it.
Absolutely, man. I'm with you.
All right, we're going to start on the YouTubers first. We'll come to gun channels in just a few moments, I promise you. Kenneth Bashman, any thoughts on the Krebs custom key mod rails for an AK?
They're awesome. Flat out, they're awesome. It was a good thing he came up with there. I love the way they attach to the gun. They're very solid. They don't get hot, which surprised me. I thought they would, but they don't. I haven't personally tried the longer one yet. I built a couple of crinks with them on our new 710 models. We're using them on as a custom add on some of the 710 models, and I ran them on that, running them pretty hot and heavy, and the Ultimac was pretty steaming on the top, but the handguard itself stayed nice and comfortable. And of course, it's key mod. You know, that's like the cool shit now. You know, so it's a no, but the way he designed it, the way it locks up into the receiver in the back, and the way it ties in with the handguard retainer in the front, it's a drop-in replacement for any standard AK handguard. You know, now the one that we're using an Ultimac rail on the top, so we've actually taken his off and modified the lower to use them together. But it's still it's a very high quality part the way it's made. You know, again, Krebs can make good stuff. Do you prefer the
Ultimac over the Midwest Industries AK rail?
No, the Midwest Industries, again, that's another good one too. We're pretty fond of the Ultimac. We consider that probably the best, mainly just because it sits the lowest and it absolutely holds zero better, you know, without a problem. I've never had one fail on me. You know, Krebs' new key mod stuff is real nice. Certainly the U.S. Palm stuff, the Midwest Industries things, those are probably like the best rails available on the market. Damage Industries also makes a good one as well. Those are the ones we find that we'll recommend that they do hold zero, that they hold up in their quality parts. Most other stuff than that, you know, there's not a, you know, even some of the Ultimac stuff, their lower rails I think are a little too heavy. But their upper rail that replaces the gas tube, that's like, we have not found anything that works better than that as far as keeping the red dot down low and serving the purpose it does. I can run an offset mount for my flashlight and my red dot, and that's all I need. Even on a 3-inch Ultimac on a crank, it works fine. You know?
That's cool. What kind of red dot do you run?
Aimpoint T1.
All right. Do you prefer the traditional 7.62 by 39 ammunition or the 5.45 by 39 AK?
Two different purposes. If I was going to be limited to what I could have, I would probably have the 7.62 gun. If I could only have one AK, just because it has the better penetrating power, bigger bullet, but it doesn't have the distance that the 5.45 does, and it doesn't have the long range accuracy that the 5.45 does. I mean, the 5.45 can make hits pretty pretty decent hits out to 500 yards, which you're not going to be able to do with the 7.62. I mean, you can, but you're basically lobbing it in. It's more like mortar shooting at that point, you know. But if I could only have one, it would be a 7.62 gun. That said, I love the 5.45 because you can just shoot the shit out of that stuff. And well, it used to be real cheap until they fucked up and screwed up all the 7.6 ammo. Now we were paying 16 cents a round. Now we're paying 27 cents a round, whatever. It's still cheap by comparison to what guys that are running M4s are doing, but just kind of aggravated me that we can't get that. So we were about to get the 7N10, which was the better shit, and now that won't come. You know?
What do you think about the ban in the 7N6 ammo?
We actually filed a FOIA to find out what really caused it, because there's been a lot of things about it, and supposedly it was some importer applied for a import of 5.45 pistols, which would have basically turned 5.45 7N6 into armor-piercing ammo and a pistol, which you can't have. So just the fact of, for years people avoided building 5.45 AK pistols because they knew if you did that, you could no longer import the 7N6 ammo. And few people did it, and it was quite bullshit that they did. And the people in the industry knew you shouldn't do it, because the same thing happened. I don't know if you remember back in '89, '90. That's what happened with Steel Core 7.62 39 ammo. We used to have all this great Chinese Steel Core ammo here that was accurate as shit and would shoot through anything. And but because Olympic Arms made an AR pistol in 7.62, they banned all the import of that, and that probably damaged Olympic Arms' reputation for the life of their company. They've never recovered from it. They've never been as big as they were back in the day when that happened. And then again, it just happened again with the 5.45 ammo now. And they're saying, ATF is saying it's because somebody filed for an import license to bring pistols in. So we filed for a FOIA to find out who it was.
Okay. Tina Fabrizio, a fellow YouTuber and friend of mine, he asked AK-74 or 47?
I know Fabrizio. He's a good dude.
You definitely probably met him during SHOT Show, if not you personally know him.
Yeah. Didn't we just answer that question? Didn't we just ask choice of 74 or 47?
Yeah, I guess so.
Like I said, if I can only have one, make it 7.62. If I got more than one, I'm getting a 5.45 in that mix.
All right. Okay, I heard AK should use leaded rivets. Do Arsenal's rifles use them?
They do.
Okay.
They do.
I've always been curious, what exactly constitutes an Arsenal rifle besides the name? I'm not an AK savvy person. I just like my Sega.
Well, Arsenal sells a lot of Siegas because Arsenal depends on Arsenal of Bulgaria to make guns for them. Because Arsenal here, I mean, they can make stuff there, but they're not really a gun factory. They're an assembly plant and distribution network. Arsenal USA. They're here in Vegas with us. But most of the guns that they sell, any of the Bulgarian guns, come out of Arsenal, Bulgaria, and they're imported here. The import laws being what they are, I don't want to get into that because that's a whole other can of worms. How they do what they do, but like there's a lot of their series, like their SGL series, those are Siegas that they import into the country, and they basically do their own conversions on them and put their parts on them. So it's a Russian gun with Bulgarian parts on it. The original Arsenal guns themselves that are not Siegas, those are coming from Arsenal of Bulgaria, and then they're finished here. So I personally think that Arsenal is probably one of the best guns you can get off the shelf. As far as value for your money, a gun that's going to be dependable for you and it's going to be put together right. Because most others are built by the lowest bidder, to be honest with you, and that's just how I look at things like that. Okay.
Olesk0004, are you a fan of the Russian optic?
There was one of the red dot ones. I'm trying to remember what the name it was I had that was kind of cool. It had I can't remember the name what they're called. But it had 4 different reticles in it, which I thought was kind of neat. And I ran it for a while, but it eventually broke and stopped working, which has been most of my experience with Russian optics. They generally tend to break. I had a PSL for a while, and I ran the stock PSL scope on it, which is, again, it's not a Russian scope, but it's based on the same thing. And it wasn't so bad once you got to learn how to use it. Being mounted off to the left of the gun is kind of a challenge when you're dealing with long-range shooting, but particularly if you're trying to shoot left-handed. By the time I figured out how to use the thing, it broke. So I ended up using American Optics on it after that. So they're kind of cool, but they just don't seem to be hardy enough. If you look at some of the more modern Russian Spetsnaz guys and the police units over there, a lot of them are running EOTechs now. They're running a lot of Magpul stuff on their guns too, which is quite interesting if you look at that stuff there.
Next question: how do you like the PAP M2 as an SBR?
The PAP pistols, we won't build SBRs on them. If somebody insists on it, yeah, but if somebody sends us a PAP pistol, we will strip the receiver off of it and use the parts to rebuild it on a new receiver. They're okay for what they are, but they can be a lot better. Sometimes the head spacing is a little weird on them. Sometimes the trunnions are a little crooked on them. There's little things that can be. The thing is, if somebody's going to buy a crank from us, they're going to pay a lot of money, and I want them to get the best gun they can get. So to spend an extra $100 or $200 to build it on a new receiver is worth the money, in my opinion. If my customer base, they get that. And I, being a fighting guy, I think you know what I mean. The guy, I don't want to sound like elitist or nothing, but let me just say that the guy that's only going to shoot his gun a couple of times a year, he doesn't necessarily need what we do. A Wasser's going to work fine for him and be all the gun he ever needs. But most of our customers are the kind of guys that are probably shooting minimum 500 to 1,000 rounds a week through their gun, and they're taking classes every month, maybe every week. They're constantly training 3, 4, 5 days a week, and just putting a lot of heavy use on the gun. Cheaper guns don't put up with that. And you're running a PAP pistol. There's a lot of things that probably wouldn't hold up if you were running a gun like that. If you're going to spend that kind of money, make it right.
All
That's just our philosophy.
This is actually my question, and I've always been in this argument with friends. How often do you need to clean an AK? I mean, after what round count?
I'd say that's situational. We live here in the desert where we don't have a lot of humidity, so corrosive ammo is really not that big of an issue here. I've got a Bulgarian crank, 545 crank that when I first built it about, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, I first built it. And we built it with the intent of just shooting the shit out of it with the most corrosive ammo we could find and just seeing if we could kill it. And it probably went about 10 or 12,000 rounds before we cleaned it. And there really wasn't much that damage done to the gun. That gun's about 120,000 rounds through it right now. And we show it in the classes frequently as a just an example of what happens. But it's really not that bad. But of course, that's because most of the time it's been here in the desert. Now, if you're in this, like you're in South Carolina, I believe, right?
Yes, sir. Very hot, very humid.
Yeah, so now it's a whole different story for you. You shoot some of that highly corrosive ammo, like the 7N6 ammo, or some of the old Yugoslav 7.62 ammo they used to have here. That stuff is extremely corrosive. Your gun is going to be rusted the next day, if not within a few hours.
I have shotguns that if I don't oil the day after I shoot them, they start to get rust on them almost immediately.
Yeah, we did an LE class in Shreveport, Louisiana, and I had like 10 machine guns in a case. We finished up in the day, and it was raining at the end of the day, so the guns got wet. And I just hosed them down with WD-40, threw them back in the case, and we shoved the case in this lockup and came back the next morning and opened it up. None of the bolt carriers would move. The pistons were all frozen in the blocks. There was rust all over the whole outside of the guns, and these were after they were sprayed with WD-40. So that was quite an eye-opener for me in the South, So it's very situational. If you're running corrosive ammo, clean that gun every time you shoot it, or else you're going to have a problem if you're in a high humidity area. In the desert or low humidity areas, I don't think it's that big of a deal, honestly.
Okay. What's your everyday pistol? Excuse me. What's your everyday pistol carry?
Glock 19.
All right. Oh, that was quick.
I've been carrying Glocks for over 20 years.
Any particular generation preference?
Gen 2, just because I'm old.
Yeah, I've actually got the Gen 3. That's my carry.
I'll probably buy a Gen 3 just so I can have a flashlight rail on it. I'm not a big fan of weapon-mounted lights, but I would like to have the option,
Okay. What kind of weapons light are you thinking about getting?
I'm sorry, John.
What kind of weapons light are you leaning towards?
We've been running the M-Force lights. They're pretty nice. They seem to be pretty nice units. I've got a Glock 35 that I use for my bedroom gun. So it's a Gen 3, so it's got the rail on it. I run an M-Force on that, and that's really the only weapon-mounted pistol or amount of light I have on a pistol is that one. So.
All right. What do you think can be done to improve the AK iron sights?
Well, we've done it for years. The stock front sight post is really not that bad. It's really the rear sight that's the biggest problem. The notch is very small, and we started doing this years ago, and people are finally figuring out that it's not that hard to do, and they're copying it now, which is that's bound to happen. But essentially, we open the notch up to 3/32 on the width, and we radius the corners for because it's a visual trick that I learned from my optometrist, where eliminating the right angles on the outside tends to draw your eyes to the center of the blade faster, and opening the notch wider allows you to pick up the front sight much faster. So it's a huge difference if you do it. And you can just take a needle file and do it yourself on your sights. Grind it off on the corners on a grinder if you got that the ability to take your sight off and do that. I mean, it makes a huge difference, particularly if your eyesight's a little bit wasted on you, if it's starting to go bad on you. It's a big help.
Okay. A few more audience questions, and we're going to get back to the conversations we had outlined. Do you think the left side charging handle on AKs? Hang on. Do you like the left side charging handles on AKs, or do you think they're mostly a novelty?
It's a novelty. Are you still there? I just lost the picture on my thing here. Are you still seeing me?
Yes, you're good.
Okay. Anyhow, I'm sorry. What was the question again? I just got distracted because the picture went away.
Do you like the left-sided charging handles on an AK, or do you think they're a novelty?
I think they're a novelty myself. Of course, I've been running an AK for 30 years, the way it was made, and I don't have a problem running it that way. It's really about the manual of arms. A lot of guys that are used to running an M4 and they're used to grabbing it on the left-hand side, they'll go to the left-handed charging handle and they feel comfortable with it, but it's really just a training issue, in my opinion. But again, I've been running the guns, the way they were made for so long that it really doesn't make that big of a difference to me. We've done them before. There's a company called Lightning Bolt that makes them, and we sell a few of them. Occasionally, we're a dealer for him, and occasionally we'll get requests for them. It's usually from guys that are running primarily an M4, but they're buying an AK as a secondary type gun or whatever, and they just want it to be more like their M4. You know what I mean? That's about the one place where I find the niche makes sense.
All right. A few more things. We're going to start wrapping up here soon, so if anybody has any more questions, they need to ask now because we're going to cut it off in probably the next 10 minutes or so. Gun Websites wants to know your next class, when and where it will be held.
Our next one is the end of this month. It's the 30th, 31st, and the 1st of May in Jacksonville, North Carolina. I think we have maybe 1 or 2 spots left in that class, and they're going to be cut off on Friday. The enrollment will be cut off on Friday because we just can't at that point after that because we have to prep for the class and everything. So, but if you on our website we have a list of our class schedules for the rest of the year, and we're already starting to book classes into 2015 now. So.
All right, and you travel all over the U.S., correct?
We do. I mean, this one's all the way on the East Coast this time. Actually, this place we're going this time in North Carolina we're doing it at the same place we did our very first build class a year and a half ago, whatever it was. And so it's kind of like we're going back to the original place just because it's fun. Real cool guys, nice big machine shop there, a couple of nice guys that own it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, Vicky Tarzinski, you already know the answer to that. It's no. She asked, could I keep the rifle after taking her class if I live in Connecticut?
I don't think Connecticut allows that.
Yeah, that's not.
No.
Yeah, while we don't agree, while I don't agree with it, don't bring ARs and AKs into ungun-friendly states. Especially if you know you're committing a federal or a state crime at that point.
Yeah, that's not going to work out for you. Well, the way it works when people come to our classes, if we're on the road class, we always have a local FFL there that can do transfers for local people. And if there's anybody else that we can't transfer to, then it gets shipped to an FFL in their state, and then they have to go through an FFL to get it there because we do everything with serial numbered receivers. We don't do anything with no serial numbers. We just can't do that. I mean, we have a license. We have to play the game. Like you said, I don't like it either, but it is the rules we have to go by, or else I can't be in business.
Exactly. I don't. Like I said, I may not agree with it, but it is the law, and that's why I live in a gun-friendly state and not Connecticut.
Absolutely. That's why I left California. I was born and raised there, but I knew in the early '90s I had to get out of there. You know.
So we're going to start wrapping this thing up here in a few minutes. Tell us where to find you. I mean, well, you've recently started a YouTube channel. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, Rifle Dynamics YouTube channel. We've got, I don't know, 6 or 8 videos up on there right now. We're making more all the time. Our biggest time is time. We're getting these things edited and getting things put together and getting them up. We're getting better at that, but we're a little slow on it right now, and we're working through that as things go on. But yeah, you'll be seeing more of that as it goes on. We also have our website, RifleDynamics.com, our Facebook page, Rifle Dynamics Facebook page. I have my own Facebook page also that carries a lot of our stuff on it. We're on Twitter. We're on most of the social media stuff. I don't deal with most of that stuff. We have people in our office that do. I stick mostly with Facebook stuff. It's one of the few things I know how to work, kind of. So.
Well, you get a good hang of Google Plus for a beginner.
Well, I just got this just for this interview because I didn't even know I had to have it before. So.
Yeah, for our audience don't know, there was a very there's about 4 or 5 emails sent between us explaining exactly how to get on tonight.
Yeah. Well, that's because I have smart people that work that stuff out and then just give me dummy notes so I can get through it and not look like an idiot. Sometimes it works.
You did really well tonight. Audience feedback has been great. I mean, this is probably one of my favorite interviews. I've been following you for a long time. I realized you just figured out who I was like 2 weeks ago, but I've been very well aware of you and your store a little bit. Oh, well, I'm thinking of, tell us a little bit about your online store.
Our online store, yeah, our web store. Actually, I don't even know what's on it right now. They added so much stuff to it. I don't know. I mean, you can. Obviously our guns and stuff are up there, but we do carry a lot of our swag stuff, our patches, our stickers. You can also order individual parts there. We have a lot of surplus AK parts. Some of them are brand new. Some of them are like new. Just tons of stuff up there, and we try to offer decent prices on it. Magazines, gas blocks, stock sets, just tons of stuff that that are for your AK that you would find very useful. We don't sell crap. We only sell stuff that we would use ourselves.
Oh yeah. Well, doing a little bit of research, I went to your store and there's a lot of like plug-and-play parts for AK-47s and like not Tapco cheaper, lower-end stuff like B5 SOP mod kits and stuff like that. So when I finally do end up upgrading my Sega, I'm definitely going to be visiting your store and getting some of those parts.
Well, be sure to do so, man. We'll take care of you real well there, John. You know that.
Oh yes.
But yeah, this has been a fun interview. That's the first time I've done this. Like, I didn't know you could use YouTube to broadcast live. It's kind of cool. I got to figure out how to do this.
Well, we can always walk you through, and a little bit later, this is going to be after the show ends. It's called One-on-One. It's my show, but I'm inviting 1 or 2 people in here, so you can talk to them. They have a little bit more influence than I do, but that's a conversation for when I hit the stop record button.
Cool.
All right, we're going to wrap things up, so thank you all for watching. If you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the like button. All of the Jim Fuller of Rifle Dynamics information will be in the description a little bit later on. That'll be his Facebook, his Twitter, his Instagram, and of course, his webpage. Go by and visit all of those links. Jim Fuller really is one of the best in the AK marketplace. Jim, would you like to close out tonight with anything?
Yeah, I just want to thank you, John. I appreciate it. Was really nice of you to invite me on. I want to thank your guests. Good questions, good smart questions. A lot of times some of the questions are just kind of like 9 versus 45 stuff. But no, it's a great group. I enjoyed the time, and let's do it again sometime. It'll be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, like I said, I'm gonna bring up 1 or 2 people in here to talk to you a little bit more. Very influential in the YouTube marketplace. So sure. I'd like to thank all the audience for watching. Jim, thank you for being on. It was a great conversation.
Thank you too, man. I enjoyed it too. We'll do it again sometime soon.
Yes, sir. All right, everybody. This is Peyton with Guns 111. This is the end of Guns 111, Episode 3. Good night.